Here is the Bitcoin Senator, Cynthia Lummis. She says, I believe we can get, and she's reacting to David Bailey's original tweet where he says the Bitcoin and crypto industry's policy wish list is long and pressing. But the strategic Bitcoin reserve is the number one most urgent and transformational policy on President Trump's agenda. The downstream effects change everything. We must get it done in the first 100 days. Polymarket gives the odds of that passing about 32%, so they are rising. But, we got to get those numbers up. Senator Cynthia Lummis, which famously took out the strategic Bitcoin reserve bill in front of the Bitcoin 2024 Nashville crowd shortly after Donald Trump concluded his speech. She says, I believe we can get this done with bipartisan support in the first 100 days if we have the support of the people. It is a game changer for the solvency of our nation. Let's put America on sound financial footing and pass the Bitcoin Act. Here is David Bailey. David Bailey is the CEO of BTC Inc., which is responsible for Bitcoin Magazine and the Bitcoin Conference. And he says, let me be clear. The United States is being front run on its Bitcoin strategy and must stand up the strategic Bitcoin reserve as quickly as possible. It's literally a national security issue. Here's Fred Krueger. Goes on to say, my wish list, what else? Get rid of KYC for buying and selling Bitcoin. Allow anybody to sell Bitcoin for cash without penalty. Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Fund. Elimination of all taxes on Bitcoin, which, by the way, this is something that Trump has been quoted on saying, getting rid of capital gains taxes on Bitcoin. So again, this isn't just, a dream or whatnot. Eliminate all SEC crypto lawsuits except fraud. Banks are allowed to custody Bitcoin. In-kind Bitcoin for the ETFs. I completely agree. Now, here's this article by Blockhead that kind of summarizes all the promises that Trump has made so far. The so-called Bitcoin stockpile. He says, quote, if I'm elected, it will be the policy of my administration, the United States of America, to keep 100% of the Bitcoin the U.S. government currently holds and acquires into the future. Key word there, acquires into the future. I think if the U.S. government started acquiring Bitcoin, it would be a domino effect all over all these countries worldwide, specifically the ones that see the United States as their competitor. They would have no choice but to buy Bitcoin or get left behind. He also promised to fire Gary Gensler. On day one, I will fire Gary Gensler. And it was so funny because at the Nashville conference, when he said that, the crowd erupted and he's like, you guys really like that. And he repeated it and the crowd erupted again, even louder. Bitcoin for the people, by the people. Quote, the rules will be written by people who love your industry and not hate your industry. I love that. It goes on to say, and this is Ben's territory, miners for America. Here's the specific tweet. Vote for Trump. Bitcoin mining may be our last line of defense against a CBDC. Biden's hatred of Bitcoin only helps China, Russia, and the radical left. We want all the remaining Bitcoin to be made in the USA. It will help us be energy dominant. And of course, we know Trump's wording, mine baby mine, or energy something energy. Anyways,
Drill,
I do
baby, drill.
drill baby drill. There we go. Thanks, Opti. So I want to get Ben's opinion on this. Ben, I mean, the CEO of one of the world's largest Bitcoin publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies, it must have been huge, the fact that Trump won this election, specifically for your side of the industry.
Oh, absolutely. I think the biggest overhang that's been happening on Bitcoin for several years now is just regulatory uncertainty around Bitcoin. And with Trump coming in, that all goes away. Like Gensler's is getting replaced. We're bringing in a lot of pro Bitcoin people into the administration. And I think I saw the statistic correctly. I think I don't know how it breaks down between crypto and Bitcoin, but I think crypto in total donated about 170 million to Trump. And I think Trump raised about 350 million. So crypto contributed about 50% of the campaign funds to Trump. And, they won. Like crypto Bitcoin companies, they're going to have a whole lot of opportunity here in this next administration. And to be honest, I don't think we want special treatment. I think we just want to be left alone. We just want to have the lawfare stop. We want to have all of the attacks against the industry stop, because we're not out here trying to, boil the ocean. We're out here trying to restore hard money to the people of the entire planet. And we can only do that if we are able to run our businesses the way that we need to run our businesses. Or Trump coming in here is a massive win. Like we have been doing a lot of growth in the United States and rebalancing the United States. We've got a huge uh, pipeline of activity here in Pennsylvania, and I think under a Trump administration, it's just so much more exciting. There's going to be so much less red tape. We're going to be able to get so much more done so much faster.
Man, I'm so excited to hear more about it. We're going to talk about Bitfarms, what their strategies are during the culture segment. And you did say something, Ben. You said Pennsylvania. This is breaking news, massive breaking from. But I did confirm this. I did listen to the spaces where specifically this state representative, Mike Cabell, did confirm that this was being introduced. But Dennis Porter says, I can confirm the state of Pennsylvania has introduced legislation to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I mean, this is massive. Not only strategic Bitcoin reserves on the federal level, but also on the state level. I think we heard something similar coming out of Florida as well. I mean, like, what's the famous Trump line? Like, you guys are gonna get tired of winning. We're gonna win so hard. I mean, that's what it feels like, bro. Like, this is absolutely nuts. We're starting the bull market. We hit $93,500. I think a lot sooner than a lot of people were anticipating. So yeah, man, I think this is just great overall. Ben, let me ask you something. How much of this recent pump is due to Trump winning this recent election?
Probably all of it, to be honest with you, because you saw Bitcoin pumping, going into the election, and Bitcoin beat all the polls in terms of determining who was the winner of the election, and it's been a nonstop, rally since. It's hard to say that this would be anything other than the Trump administration and what that means for regulatory certainty, support for Bitcoin, all the different other initiatives that they're doing in terms of maybe changing tax policy or implementing a strategic Bitcoin reserve or reducing regulatory red tape for building Bitcoin mines or energy plants. This is probably 100% the Trump administration winning that victory.
What would have it looked like? And of course, we're kind of going down the hypothetical. What would have it looked like if Kamala had won? What different strategy would you have taken with Bitfarms?
So we've got international portfolio of assets specifically to spread out that jurisdictional risk just in case stuff like that happens. But, you know, let's say Kamala Harris had won, I don't really think it matters whether or not Trump won or the Democrats won. The answer is like both sides are probably going to be running the money printers for different reasons, for different, allocations. On the Dem side, obviously they'd be running the money printer to do all of their, social programs and stimulus and helicopter money. And, on the Trump side, he'd be running the money printer in order to support business and the stock market and the economy. Either way, it's probably going to be good for Bitcoin. But with a Trump administration, it means that lawfare is gone. It means that regulatory uncertainty is gone. It means that those dominoes effect that you talked about with all the other countries is lined up because the U.S. determines everything. When let's say the U.S. wants to increase the money printing, guess what every other country in the world does? They increase their money printing because the last thing that you want is to get your FX out of whack with the U.S. dollar, right? That starts screwing up a whole lot of problems in terms of your import export, in terms of your foreign reserves balances. There's all sorts of different things that have knock on effects if your FX starts getting out of whack with the US dollar. And so most countries are trying to be as stable to the US dollar as possible, right? Maybe they do a peg, maybe they do a ranged peg or a floating peg system. But most people want to stay in line with the United States. So if they want to print 5% per annum, they're going to try and print, as close to 5% per annum. If the United States wants to print 5% per annum to run a strategic Bitcoin reserve, guess what every other country is going to be incredibly incentivized to do because they're not going to want to be falling behind. They're not going to want to get out of sync with the United States because it's going to be disastrous for their own economy.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and Trump was right in that sense, Ben. It sounds like what you're saying. Like they would have pushed the industry overseas. So I think Trump was because a lot of people say Trump is hyperbolic, and in a lot of ways maybe he is, but I think his claim at the Bitcoin conference is it's just funny the way he says things, right? His claim at the Bitcoin conference was right in a way, right? Where he says, Kamala is going to destroy the industry. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be horrible. And, we want the Bitcoin all to be mined in the United States and have fun with your Bitcoins and all that stuff. But like underlying, his antics and the way that he says it and his delivery, he was right. Like, I think it would have happened. And, as a show, as a Bitcoin show, we tried to stay away from politics for the longest time. Even I was getting upset with Opti when he said Trump derangement syndrome at one point. I was like, dude, what are you doing? We want to be inclusive here. And we were kind of like, we were forced because it became very apparent that Operation Choke Point 2.0 is real, was
Yeah.
real. The proposed 30% Bitcoin mining tax, and it's they tried to walk it back as soon as it got closer to the election with the crypto for Harris and stuff. But she never went on record saying all the things that Trump said about protecting the industry and ending, this regulatory onslaught, this regulatory attack. So yeah, man. Opti, do you have any thoughts before we get onto the culture?
Well, I mean, I was going to troll a little bit, but I actually have a serious question that I'd would love to ask Ben, considering we are talking about Trump and what he said in that announcement of he wants all of the remaining Bitcoins mined in America. So what's your first thoughts when you hear that, Ben, as a Bitcoin miner?
Not possible and not desirable, to be honest with you. But it's fine because it's not possible to achieve that goal. But if that is a stated objective, then all the things that you're going to do in order to help achieve that objective is really going to make America the number one jurisdiction for mining Bitcoin. But that doesn't mean that you're ever going to be able to keep any other country out of this, right? Um, Bitcoin is ruthless profit maximalist, and it's going to go exactly where it needs to go in order to be produced for the lowest possible cost. So if that's in the United States, great. If that's in some other country, that's what it's going to be. And Bitcoin miners have had no problem picking up, dropping miners and capital into new regions, new countries that they've never ever been to before because they understand the economic opportunity there to produce Bitcoin for a lower cost. So, not possible to achieve, not even desirable to achieve. But if he's working towards that goal, then inevitably, I think he is going to make America the number one Bitcoin mining country on the planet.
This is fake news. All of the Bitcoin needs to be made in America. No, but in all seriousness, I completely agree. Yeah, man, it's great because it's like you have countries that are competing for the hash rate, right? We had news earlier on in the year where Russia legalized Bitcoin mining, right? So you have all these nation states that are essentially competing for the hash rate. That is great for Bitcoin companies. That is great for Bitcoin. You want this to happen, and Kaiser actually predicted this when he was describing and talking about the so-called global hash war. I think this is exactly what he was talking about. Anyways, very very exciting stuff. Heading into 2025, the future definitely looks bright.